So welcome to our book discussion. I am Tyler McDonald.
I'm Dan Soper.
I'm at home.
I'm Jack Parker.
Alright, and so the first question we are going to look into is, was Miriam wrong to ignore her father for as long as she did?
So Dan, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I would have figured that because it said during the book that after a few years, or maybe it was like even 10 or 15 years, the father was sitting outside the house and like waiting. So you would have thought that Miriam would have at least forgiven her father. And I mean, she wasn't really mad. I thought she was more disappointed. I didn't think like she said some mean things, but she was like a teenager, so I figured maybe she was kind of lashing out and
To her father?
yeah, well, storm up in your room type thing, and then kind of get over it in a week, like a couple hours.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd have to say that, I feel like her actions were justified against him. As
No, I'm not saying they're not justified for her to be mad, but like, she didn't talk to him for like years and years and years.
Right. And I guess that's why he was going to visit, to ask for forgiveness.
I kind of thought that she was going to be happy when he arrived at her house, but she wasn't. I guess she was still holding a grudge because he didn't see her.
I understand it. I mean, first she loved him so much she like left her mom, and then who then committed suicide. And then even after that, she was like, oh, maybe it'll be okay because she was with her dad, and he like basically sold her to like the highest bidder.
Right.
And I mean, even in the letter which she wrote to her, he basically said, I can't understand why you're so mad at me, and still mad at me.
It's kind of strange if you think about that selling to the highest bidder, because in reality it was really his wives who influenced him to do that, which is implied by the novel. But it's just kind of interesting to see the contrast between how they had power over him, while for the rest of the novel Rashid has power over her, or the woman in his life. So.
I think part of that is influenced by the change in regime with the Taliban coming to power, where Rashid was getting men were definitely given a lot more power over their wives, and eventually she's killed.
And Rashid kind of seems like more of a traditional Muslim, where he really wanted control over Miriam all the time, and Miriam's father, in the end, he was sorry. So I don't think Rashid ever would have been sorry.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah, you can tell that he doesn't want to do it that much. Like, he's like really apologizing when she's getting on the bus, all that. And I mean, I would have thought that she would have realized that he really didn't want to do it, and at least tried to make amends. But it leaves a lot to the imagination because there's a big gap where it's Layla in the story and not Miriam. So it leaves a lot to the imagination. But you're meant to assume that she didn't even like look out the window really.
Right, so obviously he felt guilty about it and some kind of regret. I was with him for a really long time because he didn't go to see her for many years, but it was obviously there because he did see her eventually. And then there's the box that he leaves for her eventually, and it's the movie that she wanted to see.
I wonder if he thought that she would come to see him. Didn't the letter say that he expected her to come after, like, when she didn't go outside to see her? He wrote a letter saying that, a letter that she never opened, saying that, like, come see me and then I'll talk to you. I wonder if he expected her to come before her death.
I mean, I think he was definitely hoping that. I mean, I don't know if he really thought it, because I mean, who knows when he didn't really know he was going to die, but it seemed like he was going to die pretty soon after.
Alright, so I think we'll move on to another question.
I think we should move on to like kind of progress the story. Rashid,
Number 5.
number 3, like, no, yeah, number 5. Why? So we'll move on to Layla with Rashid. Miriam was kind of raised in I guess more classic, maybe Islamic kind of fundamentalist view of obedience, and kind of her mom always told her that she's going to have to take a lot, but Layla was raised very modern, so why do you think Layla agrees to marry Rashid, when you can tell that she kind of knows how he is, but she's willing to do it anyway. Why do you think? I think that it's a good question. I don't really know. I guess she was just so afraid because to her everyone was dead.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely for safety reasons, and also Rashid kind of puts on that mask that we see with Miriam eventually, originally. Like even when he hands her, like, I don't know if you guys remember the gift that he gives her, like the blanket at first, and then she says in the book, like, this is the first, like, heartfelt gift she ever got. Meanwhile, we know that Rashid is only using her for, like, an ability to get a son, and he's actually kind of a cruel man. So I think he puts that same mask with Layla, and kind of that makes her feel welcome, and like it's another, he just, like you said, she lost all of the prominent figures in her life, her mother and her father, and so she kind of wants another male role, I think.
Also, it's just kind of survival because she had nowhere to go. And if she didn't marry Rashid, they would have kicked her out, and who knows how long she would have lasted on the streets, nowhere to live, no family, and she was pregnant too.
Yeah.
Right.
Layla was.
Yep.
Yeah, that's another thing with the whole thing with Tariq, because she was pregnant, she needed to find someone.
Yes.
She needed to find someone to marry, because if she had the child and it was just her, then who knows what would happen. You need someone to be a father for the child.
Exactly. That seems like the most logical. Why do you going back to Rashid? Do you think Rashid was always like that, or do you think kind of mean and angry and abusive, or do you think it was the fact that he had like the tragedies in his life of his wife and son dying?
Well, I'd like to point out just on that question, there's one part where I don't remember if it's Miriam or Layla, but one of them mentions a picture that they see, and it says, and it's of Rashid and his previous wife and his son. And I remember one of the description of the wife was like she looked sad or something like that. So I think that might.
I thought she was kind of projecting like fear, like she wanted to see that.
Yeah.
Or she didn't want to see, so she saw that it was sad.
That could be one
I
interpretation.
thought that's
of
what it
yeah.
was, but that's also a possibility.
I think it definitely had an effect, because he had a wife and he had a son, and then after that, he was so desperately trying to get back to where he was that he was kind of aggressively going after it, like forcing himself onto Miriam and Layla, and then being really upset when he didn't have a son with Aziza.
Right.
So,
And when Miriam was first pregnant with their possible son, he was in a good mood. He was pretty excited. So
Right.
maybe he just really wanted a son because he lost his older son.
You're right. He really only started becoming like really cruel after she had the stillbirth or
miscarriage maybe.
yeah, or miscarriage.
Alright, well, let's move on to, why did Miriam need Layla before she could strike back against Rashid? In that, she never, she changes significantly with Layla being around. She feels like she has a companion or whatever, but she always knew that she was being wronged and that she pretty much didn't deserve everything. And she was even told beforehand by her mother that this would happen. So she knew that something bad was going to happen, but she seemed to have like a fighting spirit at the beginning, especially like with the way she handled like her dad and storming out. And I don't know why she didn't do that to Rashid earlier on. It took her so long, and maybe the friendship with Layla and the kids to finally muster up the courage or the strength or the what have you to actually do something about it, which was killing. So
I think a lot of that had to do with the way that she saw Layla being treated. It was less in self-defense for her than defending Layla. And she definitely saw kind of herself in Layla and how cruel Rashid was, and that it really was unfair. Like, with herself, she'd been through hardships, whatever, so she was like, well, I'm used to it, I might as well kind of deal with it. Whereas with Layla, she's like, she shouldn't have to put up with this.
If Rashid was gonna kill her like he was gonna kill Miriam, like he was gonna kill Layla, do do you think she would take a chance to kill him to save her own life, or did she only kill him out of defense for Layla and the kid?
I think that kind of goes to a separate topic, as in, do they kind of have more of a friendship relationship, Miriam and Layla, or a mother and daughter relationship? And I have to say, I think it's more of a mother and daughter relationship, because while they are friendly, Miriam is kind of a role model for Layla, and I think Miriam treats Layla as the daughter she never had, because, I mean, she did have all those children who died in birth. So I would say that she did it out of protection for Layla and the children.
Yeah, and I think in the first part of the book, when it was talking about Miriam, when it was talking about how she couldn't have kids, I think Layla was born at the same time, and it kind of like overlapped when they were talking about Layla being born.
Right.
So it kind of fits as a symbol as her being Miriam's daughter, kind of.
Okay. I think that about wraps it up.
Yep.
So, thank you for watching, and this has been our book discussion.